Welcome everyone to a new coffee tasting. Today we are tasting a Peru Cajamarca. And for those of you guys who are joining for the first time, welcome. It is an honor to have you. And for those of you who are returning, it is an honor to have you back. I greatly appreciate you guys really supporting this channel. And then for those of you guys who it is your first time doing a coffee tasting with me, I like to brew my coffee 3 different ways to explore the different flavor notes that we get from our coffee. So we are going to be trying the Pourover, Chemex, and French press. And so the reason why I like to brew my coffee 3 different ways is because you get a different amount of sediments to oil ratio in your coffee depending on the brew method that you choose. And the oil to sediment ratio is going to dramatically affect the flavor of our coffee. And so the reason why this is important is because we all like our coffee different. We all like different flavor notes. We like the bright notes. We like the bitter notes. So depending on what we like in our coffee is going to determine the beans that we choose, the processing method that they process the beans with, and then also to refine those flavors and to bring out those flavors that we really want. We want to choose the proper brew method for ourselves. So for me, my favorite brew method changes depending on what kind of coffee I'm drinking. But for the most part, I really like the French press coffee. And then sometimes I will go to like the classic pour over. The Chemex is really good. It's really light in flavor, so we're not going to get a really strong cup of coffee, but we are going to get a really balanced flavor. And so it does end up with a really good flavor notes, but it's not going to be strong. So that is why I brew my coffee 3 different ways, just to fully explore all the different flavor notes that we get from the same coffee, but different brew methods. And so with these particular coffees that I taste on this channel, they are small lot coffees. And what that means is they come from a very distinct region of the world. So they're going to have maybe 10 to 100 or several hundred farms that produce the beans for this particular bag of coffee. And because it's such a refined area, the local fauna in the area and everything else is going to affect the flavor. So like the humidity of the air, what goes in the soil, and then also the environment allows them to choose their processing method. So if you live in a climate that's a little too wet, you can't sun dry, and so you have to choose to either do a semi-wash or a full wash. And the processing method of whether you do a sun dry, full wash, or semi-wash is going to drastically change the flavor of your beans as well. So with these refined areas, they get to choose how they process their beans based off of their climate. And then because they come from a refined area, we're going to get a very specific flavor to that bean. So when we get like a core bag or a bag that just says like comes from the entire country of Guatemala, you get little pieces of Guatemala from all over and then thrown into the bag. And so you don't really get a specific flavor. You do get a generalized flavor. So like if there's a specific flavor that's inherent to like the entire country of Guatemala, that is going to be like the primary flavor you get, while all the other flavors kind of like commingle and you can't really pick them out. And so with the single lot or the small lot coffees, because we're getting a more refined flavor, it is a lot easier to really pick out the different flavor notes that we're getting in our coffee. And that is one of my favorite parts about having a small lot coffee, is just all the different flavor notes that we're introduced to just by tasting and being a part of these small lot coffee experiences. So my second favorite part about these small lot coffees, or actually this is probably my primary favorite part about small lot coffees, is just the stories that we learn about the farmers and then everything that they have to do and how it shapes the society that they're from. So it's really cool to see how a lot of parts of the world are changing, a lot of the times for the better. And then we also get to learn about how a lot of different people from around the world have come out of strife or disaster by using coffee as a source of commodity and a source of sustainable farming to allow them to build and grow their economy, to build a better infrastructure or better agriculture, or just a better, to give better livelihoods to the workers. And so that's one of my favorite parts about these small lot coffees and the single origin, is that it allows us to really meet and learn about the people who actually grow this coffee. And so that's what these coffees are meant for, is to learn and grow and just really appreciate all the work that the farmers put on the other side of the world, and then just how getting into the coffee world for them has changed everything in their world for the better. So when we drink our coffee, we have two different flavor notes that is going to really impact the flavor of our coffee. We have the bright notes and we have the bitter notes. And typically our bright notes are affected by the oils and the bitter notes are affected by the sediments. And with the different brew methods, we're going to get a different level of sediments to oil ratio in our coffee. So when we brew our French press, we're going to, because we only like using a metal mesh filter, not a whole lot of filtering going on. We're just blocking a lot of the large grinds from getting into our water. So we still get a lot of that sediment mud in there. And because we're getting a lot of that sediment and all the oils, we're ending up with a flavor that's way up here. And then when we go to the pour over, just the standard pour over, because we're using a paper filter, we're filtering out a lot of those sediments out of the coffee, but we're not filtering out a lot of the oils. And the reason why that is because when the oil gets trapped in the paper filter, the next set of oils pushes that oil through down into the cup, and then the oil stops getting pushed through when the brewing stops. So the only oil that's still trapped in the paper filter is what remains in the grinds, and the last bit of oil that got absorbed in the paper filter that pushed out the oil that was already there. And so with that in mind, now we have a cup with the sediments that have been drastically brought down, but the oil's only brought down just a little bit because that paper filter can't stop all the oils from passing through. Now with the Chemex we're going to get a little bit more of a different experience. It's going to be similar to the paper filter, but because the Chemex has an extra layer of paper and the paper is a little bit thicker material, it's going to allow the paper filter to absorb some more of those oils that would normally make its way through in a regular paper filter. So when we bring down that oil level, it's going to bring down that bright level as well. And so today we are trying the Peru Cajamarca. This is a really good cup of coffee. It's actually probably one of my favorites in terms of a coffee with floral notes. So typically when you get a coffee with floral notes, the floral notes are the brights. But in this coffee, we are getting bitter florals. And so the flavor notes on this Peru Cajamarca is bitter tea-like floral notes with toffee nut. And so with that toffee nut, it's going to be that slight, like, nutty, bright flavor that's kind of roasty on the sides of our tongue. So that's going to be our bright flavor. And then we just get some bitter floral notes as our bitter flavor. And then because bitter florals aren't as intense as like a bitter chocolate, it's actually going to be really, really smooth. This is one of my favorite coffees that I've ever had that has a description of floral. And the reason why is because a lot of floral coffees, especially when it's like a bright floral flavor, they leave a dry palate on your tongue. It leaves your mouth really dry after the notes have washed away. And so with that sensation, you just really need like a food item. Like you absolutely need a food item to pair with it to combat that dry mouth feeling. Other coffees where it's like really bitter and stuff like that, the bitterness is acceptable. You can deal with the bitterness, but when you have a drink that leaves you with a dry mouth feeling, that's an uncomfortable feeling. So you really need a savory item to pair with it. And so This, because we're getting bitter floral notes rather than floral bright notes, we're not getting any dry palate, which is why I really like this as a floral coffee, because we're not getting that typical sensation that you get with a floral cup. So we are going to start the tasting off with the French press. So with the French press, we're getting all the oils and all the sediments, so we're going to end up with a full flavor cup of coffee. We're going to get those bitter floral notes right off the bat. They're going to come out pretty smooth and strong at the same time. And then we're going to get washed over with that like roasty toffee nut flavor. So when I smell this coffee immediately right off the bat, I'm getting that toffee flavor. It's almost like a toffee popcorn flavor, or scent rather. It smells really, really good. Yeah, so with that coffee, we're getting that intense floral bitterness right at the get-go. It's not super intense. It's bitter, but not nearly as bitter as like a dark roast coffee where you're getting bitter chocolate notes. But it's still got that subtle bitter flavor right at the beginning. And then as it washes away, we get that toffee nut roastiness. So right now, as I've let it settle down, what I've got right now lingering is just a slight toffee brightness towards the back of my tongue on the sides. That is really good. I like that a lot. Like I said, this is one of my favorites in terms of a floral coffee, just because we're not getting that dry mouth feeling, and then the bitters are really smooth. I really like a smooth bitter flavor, or something that's not too like earthy. Um, and so I definitely prefer like the chocolate bitters. But with this, because it's not so strong, it just tastes great, very, very smooth. So now we're going to taste the pour over. With the pour over, it's going to bring out, or it should bring out, more of the toffee nut notes, and then let the bitter floral notes kind of take like a back seat in this cup. So something that I've noticed, and it might just be because we're filtering out some of the sediments out of this coffee, is the aroma coming off the pour over cup isn't nearly as strong as the French press. Obviously, because the flavor notes in the French press are going to be much stronger, it probably affects the aroma as well. But we're not getting as much of that toffee nut coming off the top of the coffee like we were in the French press, and it's very interesting. Yeah, so with the with the bitter floral notes being so subtle even in the French press, when I drink it on the pour over, it's actually not bitter at all. You get a subtle floral flavor, but we're not getting it's being toned down so much that it doesn't taste bitter anymore. And it washes away really fast. So immediately right after we take our initial sip, we get a little bit of floral flavors, but it goes away almost immediately, to allow us to taste a lot of that toffee nut sweetness. So it's really coming out really strong with that toffee nut. And this is really, really good. And so normally I don't really generally lean towards pour over coffees because we're really enhancing the bright notes. But because in this one the bright notes is that toffee nut roastiness, and then we get that very smooth bitter floral flavors that's almost non-existent in the pour over because it's been toned down so much. This makes for a fantastic cup of coffee. I might have to finish this cup later after the tasting, because that is good. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the French press, finish this off to kind of reintroduce myself to the full strength flavor of the Cajamarca. Oh man, you know what? I think I actually might like the French press more just because it has that more of an impact on the flavor. So going to the pour over is just so smooth and clean and easy to drink. It's not very intense on the palate, but with the with the French press, we're getting that much more of that bitter flavor at the beginning of our sip, and that's actually what I like in my coffee. Is I like that bold kick in the beginning, not too bold where it's like super intense earthy or like baking chocolate bitter, but I do like a little bit of a kick to my coffee. So if I were to choose between the two so far, definitely the French press, just because it has a little bit more of those dark bitter flavors in the coffee. But the pour over is still really, really good. I would be completely satisfied with the pour over if someone had served me that pour over. It's not like I would have to like ask for it to be taken back and make a French press out of it or something. All right, so now we've got the Chemex. With the Chemex, it is going to be a triple paper filtered cup of coffee, so we're going to end up with a very clean cup. With this, we should really tone down some of that toffee nut brightness and bring down some of the sweetness. And then what that's going to do, or what that should do, is bring back out some more of those bitter florals that we didn't get so much of in the pour over. But because the pour over had died down the bitters so much, with the Chemex being an even more filtered cup of coffee, I feel like we're just going to end up with a very just kind of balanced cup. And almost so balanced that it's not going to have a whole lot of flavor. But we're about to see right now. So with the aroma, we're not getting a whole lot of flavor coming off of it. It's not really steaming all that much anymore, so that might be why. It's definitely cooled down a little bit. What I will notice though is that we are getting a lot more floral notes coming off the coffee than we did with the French press or the pour over. So with the French press, we got a lot more of those chocolate with a slight toffee nut. With this, we couldn't really smell the chocolate at all, but we got primarily the toffee nut notes. Very nutty and semi-sweet in the aroma. And with this, we're not getting any of those bitter floral aromas. We're just getting that slight nutty note off the top, and that is it. Oh wow, interesting. So the Chemex has completely changed the flavor, and it's just as I thought it would kind of be. Is where we've toned down the bitters so much in the Chemex that we don't even really taste the floral bitters anymore. What we're getting right now, right off the bat, is just like that nuttiness of the toffee nut. And then that nuttiness kind of clears away, and we end up with like a really bright, semi-sweet sensation on the sides of our tongue. It's really, really good. A little too light for my flavor, just because I like those more bitter notes. And then this doesn't have a lot of sensation in terms of the flavor. I do like the nuttiness of it though. It is pretty pleasant. So I would definitely enjoy the Peru Cajamarca as a Chemex. We almost get like a little bit of a fruity flavor as well. That's probably that sweetness that's coming through as the toffee nut starts to clear out. We get a little bit of that bright sweet flavor, and it's giving us a little bit of a fruitiness to it, like a light fruit, like an apple. It's really, really good. So good that I actually had to pour myself a second cup. So there you go. So again, if I had to choose a favorite, it would definitely be the French press, which is what I typically always almost lean to, just because I look for those more intense, bitter flavor notes. Especially with this one, because it's just so irregular with the bitter florals, and then it just being so smooth and good. I really like it as a French press. That is so good. And so that is the Peru Cajamarca, you guys. And so now we're going to learn a little bit about Peru Cajamarca itself. And so with this coffee, it's all about sustainability. And so right now in this part of the world and other parts of the world in Latin America and Indonesia, uh, they're starting to fight climate change and trying to find new ways to grow coffee. And so what this coffee is all about is just the farmers coming together and experimenting and exploring new ways to grow coffee, finding new varietals, and then just really exploring the entirety of the coffee world to find a more sustainable way to continue to grow coffee. And what's so important about that is just as the world changes around us in different parts of the world, and this affects all different types of agricultural areas, we have to learn and grow and adapt to the changing ecosystem. And with the plants, normally when a ecosystem drastically changes, you have a lot of die off, and then you have a new life that comes in and moves in that's more adaptable to that new ecosystem. And so what we're doing and what farmers are doing around the world is they are trying to help nature along in keeping up with environmental impact changes to allow certain crops to continue to grow in the area that they're already being grown in without having to change them too much by finding a different varietal that grows at better in a warmer temperature, or finding a varietal that grows better with a wetter climate. And so just by exploring and discovering all these different varietals that are grown all around the world and that are from different climates, are going to help farmers find the right varietal that allows them to grow in the area that they live. And then also there are just so many different scientific aspects to what's going on, and the agricultural science that's going on in Costa Rica to help farmers around the world to continue to grow coffee by creating graft coffees of a Robusto and Arabica beans to create a new hybrid that will allow coffee to thrive in a warmer climate, but that still have the flavor notes that we love today with the Arabica coffee. And so all this and Peru Cajamarca is just a dedication to the farmer's hard work and exploring and experimenting with different varietals to make sustainable coffee and working with each other. One of the best parts about Starbucks coffee and the Starbucks nursery in Costa Rica is it's an open source agronomy. And so what that means, for anyone who doesn't know what open source agronomy means, is that any kind of science or discoveries that they make in like splicing these trees together, or any kind of new information that they come out with, they share that information with farmers around the world, different grow centers, grow ops around the world. They have specific nurseries in different places where it's just dedicated to agricultural science. And so when new discoveries are made in these nurseries owned by Starbucks, these discoveries are shared with other agronomists, regardless of whether or not it's related to coffee or not. And because all this science can be transferred from coffee to tomatoes to potatoes to fruits, vegetables, all kinds of different things, just by learning how we can take two different types of varietal coffees, mix them together to create a new varietal, and one that will thrive in a changing world in today. And we can do that with all different kinds of plants. And the best part about the Starbucks program is that it's open source, which means that they share all this information for free with other agronomists. So that's what's really important about it. And then just the fact that we are creating a more sustainable coffee future and an environmentally friendly way of growing, and just learning how to use nature to help take care of these crops is just really cool. So if you guys would like to learn more about the small lot coffees that we have and small lot coffees that other people have, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps me out in creating more videos, and then also turning back and finding more coffees for us to experiment and grow with. And then also it allows me to experiment with more brewing methods. I recently got myself a Chemex so we can start exploring with new Chemex. And then I also got a Turkish brewer as well. And this brewer is used in many different cultures in the Middle East and the European cultures. And so I really look forward to experimenting with these new brew methods. And I was only able to get an experiment with these new brew methods thanks to you guys who are helping me with this channel by hitting that like and subscribe button and then sharing it with other people. It really means a lot, and it just really fuels my passion to learn about these coffees and share them with you. So thanks again, everyone, for joining me on today's coffee tasting. If you enjoyed today's coffee tasting, click the link above. That will be the next coffee tasting that we will be doing, and the video down below is just a video that YouTube thinks that you might like. So thank you, everyone, for joining. It was an honor, and have a great day.